Okay guys, the first thing you're gonna do is remove the engine cover. You just lift up and it's held by these grommets. You won't break anything. So since we're doing the spark plugs on this, we have to work our way to the intake. There's 3 spark plugs on this side. This is a 6-cylinder engine, so 3 on this side, and there's going to be 3 in the back underneath the intake manifold. So we'll work our way this way, remove some parts just to get this out and to the coil packs and the spark plugs. So we'll start by removing this. This takes 2 of the push tabs. They're already missing. I'll replace them. You just lift up once you remove them. Take this out. Now we will be removing the battery. Make sure you have your car parked somewhere where you don't have to move it for a couple hours. We're going to start with a 12mm bolt that retains the battery. We're going to remove, this takes a 10mm. This is a 10mm. We're going to remove the negative first, then the positive, just so it doesn't touch anything. We want to work our way to the airbox, and this will give us enough room to, once we remove these clamps, get it towards the front and out. With the battery out of the way, we're going to remove the 2 10mm bolts that hold the airbox. Get a set of pliers like these to disconnect this cable, to get it off the mount. And you can use a small screwdriver, a flathead, to remove this clip. Now we'll remove the airbox clamp. We'll gently slide it out. And now we're going to remove the breather hoses. This guy, and this one right here. I don't know if you can see it. Now this thing looks like it's been removed before, and there's a bolt that you would have to remove back here. I don't know if you can see it. Now this one is missing, the bolt, but you would have to remove that. It's probably a 10mm. Guys, try to be professional about your work and put everything back the way it was. For example, when we take the wiring out from the sensor here, which is probably the map sensor, try to undo the tabs without breaking them. Undo everything without breaking anything. Just try your best. In this case, this is a customer's car, and I want this engine bay to look perfect when I'm done with it. For us to be able to see, we're going to remove this 10mm clamp. We're going to loosen it and take this intake tube out. Let's take the vacuum hose off the brake booster just to make sure that when we put it back in, when we put the intake back in, it's not in the way and we're not fighting it. Now that we remove that, we're going to remove the evap hose. And we're going to remove the low pressure fuel line. let's remove. There's a hose right behind the throttle body, and that one goes to the valve breather tube. And we're going to remove these two coolant hoses, this one and that one. These two hoses will leak coolant, so if you have a way to pinch them, like these pliers here, use those. If not, see what you can do to fold them and stop the flow of coolant. In this case, I have these pliers here. You can get them at Harbor Freight. These are from Snap or Blue Point, but you can get these. They're the same thing. I wouldn't buy these from I wouldn't pay Snap-on prices for these. Also, if you're doing it in your garage, have something underneath to catch the little bit of coolant that will come out of the throttle body. Let's start disconnecting any connectors that's going through the intake manifold. So for example, this purge valve is to be disconnected. Snap sensor. Now be gentle with these connectors. They could become brittle and break. We'll disconnect the throttle body. Never pull it from the wires, always pull from the connector. Once you're done with that, we're going to loosen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 millimeter head bolts and nuts. There are 6 bolts and a nut on this side and a nut on this side. Everything's pretty much disconnected. I disconnected some of these this plugs on this side just to make room, but it's not necessary. Now that we've taken out the bolts and the 2 nuts, let's go ahead and pull straight up and out. Now we have to make sure that we cover our lower intake runner ports to prevent any trash going into the cylinder. So we'll put a rag here so we can work. We don't want to be dropping any of those bolts in there. These won't fit through the valves that are open, but trash might go in there. And now all you have to do to remove these tabs, to unplug the connector, is push straight back. Push the tab straight back. That way you don't damage anything. Push here and pull on the connector. Be patient with these. You don't want to break any of these. And now we just take these 10 millimeter head bolts. I'll take all of them out, but I would like to, what I like to do is I leave the coil packs exactly where I found them. So I'll replace this one, the spark plug, and I'll put this coil pack back in and then move on to the next cylinder. So we're going to use a 5/8 spark plug socket. If you don't have a spark plug socket for this particular car, 5/8, or any car that uses 5/8, you can use a 16mm socket and it'll work the same way. In my case, my spark plug socket does not bring the spark plugs out because it's missing the rubber piece. But what you can do is, if you use 16mm or a socket like mine, you can just use your coil pack, put it in here, and grab your spark plug. These spark plugs come pre-gapped, but always check them and make sure that they didn't get damaged. They have a piece of plastic here when they ship them to prevent damage, but just make sure. And also, when you put them in the hole, always put your finger in there and then let them slide on the side. Kind of drop them down in place. Don't just let go of them. Also, always start the spark plug by hand. Make sure it's threaded correctly. You don't want to cross thread any spark plug holes. That would be a nightmare to repair. Now that we're done with the ones in the back, we'll do these 3 front ones. Then it'll be time to put it back together. Now that you're ready to reassemble everything, just go ahead and check on the intake manifold. Check for damages and all these small hoses, because there's very limited access once it's in. So just check to see if there's anything out of the ordinary, and also clean the tops of this right here. Clean everything really nice. All you have to do now is install it, but what I would recommend you guys to do is try to find this gasket here, the seal for the runners. You don't have to, it's not absolutely necessary, but you don't want to run into an issue where you have a vacuum leak. That'll trigger a bunch of codes, and this is the only thing that could fail at this point. So see if you can find this gasket, just replace it and start assembling everything. Alright, this is first start. After replacing the spark plugs, this is what it should sound like.